and welcome to A Word with Joy podcast. This is Joy Bennett coming to you from Santa Monica, California. This is a new podcast featuring outstanding local artists, musicians, entrepreneurs, business people, whoever seems to be notable and interesting to have you learn a little bit more about. This is our very first show, and today I'm delighted to have my husband, Richard Mackson, here. Richard is an award-winning sports photographer with close to 50 covers of Sports Illustrated under his belt. He is an entrepreneur, a businessman, an inventor, and he also worked at Eastman Kodak for a number of years, was a vice president there, and we live here in Santa Monica now. And he's also got a new business that he's starting that he'll tell you about. Richard, so glad to have you with us.
Joy, it's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon.
Thank you. Well, tell us a little bit how you got started in the sports photography world.
Well, I started at a very young age. I started taking pictures when I was 12 years old. And my father, who was the assistant track coach at Santa Monica College, brought me into the world of sports, basically lived at Corsair Field.
And that's Santa Monica College, of course.
Santa Monica College, Corsair Field.
Near here.
And he was also an athlete and was one of the people who started the seniors track movement back in the early 70s. So my father, who was a bit of a narcissist, made sure I had a camera every time he went out on a Saturday morning for a 6-mile race or something like that, and it evolved. I started taking pictures in junior high school for the yearbook, started working for the Santa Monica High School newspaper. While I was still at Santa Monica High School, I was working for the Santa Monica College newspaper, started submitting stuff to the Evening Outlook in Santa Monica, shot sports for them for a number of years, and lo and behold, one day I got a letter from Sports Illustrated after they saw some stuff I shot of the International Volleyball Association and said, "Hey, would you like to work for us?" Needless to say, I was thrilled. I sent them a portfolio. It came back with marinara sauce on it, so I know they reviewed it over lunch. And I was, I guess, 19 or 20 years old when that happened, and I've been working for them ever since. Still do a little bit for them, not very much. But in 1996, I got an offer from the Eastman Kodak Company to come back and be an agent of change there. And the question was I going to flunk the intelligence test, which I did, so we moved back there. At the same time, my lab in Santa Monica was peaking, and it was a good experience to move back to Kodak, and it was 13 wonderful years of being in a corporate environment. I did the reverse entrepreneur thing. I went from entrepreneur to corporate. And now I'm back to entrepreneur.
Interesting. And you've traveled all over the world taking photographs. Tell us some of your more extreme or unusual places that you've photographed.
Well, I haven't done the top of the Himalayas or anything like that, but I spent a tremendous amount of time doing Olympics and in varied countries. I've been to Japan, Korea, Greece, Italy.
When was your first Olympics?
First Olympics was Montreal.
In what year?
1976.
Wow.
I went there for Volleyball magazine, and it was exciting. Now, my first involvement with the Olympics was as the team photographer for the U.S. volleyball team in 1972. Although I didn't go to the Olympics, I was involved with their training and all that kind of stuff because it was done at Santa Monica College.
That's great. And you were also involved with when the Olympics were in Los Angeles in 1984. You were very instrumental in that. Tell us about that.
Yeah, in 1984, I kind of stepped away from my normal thing, and instead of being a photographer, I was the director of photographic operations for the Los Angeles Olympic Organizing Committee. One of my good friends who kind of grew up with, a guy named Rich Perlman, was the director of press operations, and as he said, I was the first person he even considered, and actually the only person he considered for that role. And while he was the youngest press chief, I was the youngest ever photo chief.
That's amazing. Of all the hats that you wear, entrepreneurship, consulting, photography, inventing, Do you have a preference for one or the other, or is it all one big adventure for you? Or
It's an interesting question. I've been asked that a lot. It's really neat. So it depends on the role I'm fulfilling at the time. I enjoy going out and shooting. I enjoy going out and inventing. I kind of now, at my age, now that I've just become Medicare eligible, so you can do the math, kind of like the role of being elder statesman and helping my fellow photographers, both my peers who I grew up with, and also the younger ones coming up, and working with the PR departments and things like that to make it better for the photographers, easier for them to work. And I'm also working on technology that enables them to make, manage, and move images and information directly out of their cameras back to their offices for different speed things.
That leads us into your newest project, a business called...
Oh, it's part of RGM Innovations, and we have two products. One which is the DMN Connect and the DMN Bridge. And these are devices that have been designed for the use for photographers to transmit, as I said before, images and information directly out of their cameras to somewhere, be it the cloud, be it an FTP server on site at an event, to move the images so they don't have to pull cards and run them around with assistants and things like that. And I didn't want to get back into business, and I'm kind of being dragged kicking and screaming by my customers, which is probably the best way to have it happen.
It is, yeah. And you have some pretty amazing customers. You've got the NFL, USC, UCLA, Kansas City Chiefs, all kinds of Dodgers, every kind. And it's just basically just getting off the ground now. For more information about that, you can go to rgmsinnovations.com. That's rgmsinnovations.com. And we're developing that website. I'm happy to say I'm vice president of the small business that he's starting. And it's really kind of a boutique business for high-level photographers to move their images more efficiently, no matter what the conditions of the stadium they may be in, or in the field, or what have you. And it's basically, considering a lot of people at your age would be happy to be retired and sit back, he's still working very hard on a lot of different projects. And in addition to that, we also have some businesses in real estate and other things, so we definitely keep busy in this household.
Well, the interesting thing about it is, the story about the house we're in, it's the house I grew up in. And according to my mother, I've been building stuff since I was 2 years old, when we had our basement in Detroit. And I'm lucky enough that when we moved back here from Kodak, I was able to take the vision and dream I had about having a shop and really putting together a world-class prototyping facility in my backyard. And really happy with it. So a lot of what I'm doing is just taking my ideas and just taking them from my dreams that I have when I'm sitting there on the couch, half asleep watching television, and turning them into reality.
And I might add, you also have been a private pilot, so you had combined flying with photography at one point. Tell us some of those adventures.
Well, I think the funniest one is the slow speed chase with O.J. Simpson. I was in the middle of taking helicopter lessons when O.J. allegedly, not allegedly, well, those of us who knew O.J., when he did what he did to his wife and her boyfriend at the time. The day it happened, or the day after it happened, Sports Illustrated said, get up in the air and take pictures of the house. So I get up in the air, take pictures of the house. I called my helicopter instructor and I said, can you get a helicopter over here for me to fly over OJ's two houses? Yeah, I got that, and that was in the morning. And that night, we had to go drop the film off. Back in those days, we shot this stuff called film, and it had to be sent back to New York for processing and to get it in the magazine. And I'm at the airport, and I get a call from the managing editor on my cell phone. And cell phones back then, were the size of a lunchbox,
yeah.
A brick. And phone rang. I pick it up, and it's Mark. And Mark never calls the photographers directly. And he goes, I don't care what it takes. Do you know what's going on right now? I said, yeah, OJ's going on the freeway. He says, I don't care what it takes. I want you up in a helicopter to get pictures of it. And I sat there and I went, sure, Mark. And I was driving a Corvette.
This was Mark, the manager.
Mark Mulvoy.
Okay, Mark.
So I had my midlife crisis car with me, and Joy was in the car, and our daughter, who was, probably 6 months old,
6 months,
was in a sedan chair that we had bolted into the back of the Corvette. And I just took off from the airport, made it back to Santa Monica, calling my flight instructor the whole way. And I said, I don't care what it takes, get the Bell Jet Ranger over here. So I get to the house, grab my camera, grab some film, drive to the pilot's entry at Santa Monica Airport, got on my handheld radio, called the tower, told them what was going on. They cleared me to come in the gate, bypass going around the runway, and just go straight across the runway to where the helicopters land. And I got on the radio to the helicopter, and he said, I'll be there in 3 minutes, but they're about to close the airspace, so I can't land. I said, well, what do you want to do? And he goes, just let me get there, hover, jump on the skid, and jump in the helicopter. So he came over, landed, that didn't land. I jump in, go up, and get this call from the tower saying that they've shut the airspace off over LAX, and all the other helicopters are stuck south of the airport. And all of a sudden, here comes OJ, and we're the only helicopter up there.
Jeez.
Everyone else had to fly around the restricted airspace to get to us. So we follow OJ to his house and photographed him getting out of the car. And the story after that is classified, and I really don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, interesting. What are some of the most challenging situations you had to deal with as a professional sports photographer?
Photographing turtle racing.
Turtle racing?
Turtle racing.
That's challenging?
Yes.
I would think it's boring.
That and backgammon.
Really?
I've had a couple of interesting assignments. World Championship of Turtle Racing.
That was at Brennan's down here.
At a bar in Brennan's.
In LA here. Yeah.
So we actually lit it like a basketball game. and then the backgammon. The backgammon was interesting. It was in Las Vegas, and for some reason I did it like 4 years in a row. I became the backgammon photography expert for Sports Illustrated.
Yeah.
And that was also the weekend I met Dan Rather. Because he was covering it for 60 Minutes, and I was covering it for Sports Illustrated. And we actually became relatively good friends. We used to correspond. We don't anymore. But we had a couple of good dinners. One on his expense account, one on mine while we were in Vegas.
Awesome.
That's back in the days when photographers had expense reports.
Those were the days. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, when you had the professional film processing lab in Santa Monica, which was called Westside Processing. And it's now rented out as another business.
It's commercial property.
But
I have.
Tell us some of the interesting stories. I know you had some unusual customers like Arnold Schwarzenegger and things like that.
Yeah, it was interesting with the lab because we had some very diverse customers. One morning, at one end of the counter was Sylvester Stallone, and the other end of the counter was Arnold Schwarzenegger, who didn't necessarily get along at that time. Arnold would come in all the time and tell my partner that he was fat, and which was quite true. But Arnold was a really great guy, and Sly was a great guy. But I think the guy who was the funniest was Jack Lemmon.
Yeah.
Jack lived up in at the end of 26th Street in Allenford. And for some reason, he would stop at the lab every day to use our bathroom. And one day I went to the bathroom, opened the door, and there's Jack sitting on the throne. And I talk about strange things that happen in a building or in your business.
It's funny.
But we had a very diverse set of clientele. It was everything from Sports Illustrated, naturally, to National Geographic, to Playboy.
A lot of celebrities use it for headshots.
A lot of celebrities use it for
headshots. Industry, yeah.
You would find somebody at our front counter that was famous practically every day, or soon to be famous. Like one, A. Martinez, who is one of the finer character actors around. The Sheen family, Martin used to come in. He said, "I'm going to protest you. I'm going to protest everything." And Charlie would be in. Their daughter Renee would be in.
Cool.
It was interesting.
Cool. How do you keep? I mean, I'm a Dodger fan. I'm a Lakers fan. I know you enjoy the sports. How do you keep it under control? Keep your cool when there's a really huge game. It's the tied up World Series, and it's the last game, and everybody's just cheering, and the pressure's on, and you've got to get those shots. How do you keep your cool? I mean, it must be difficult.
Well, first of all, I was educated by a couple of the finest flat-out journalists in existence. A guy named Ron Funk, who was the managing editor of the Santa Monica Evening Outlook, and a guy named Bill Beebe. And the one thing you've got to understand is when you're a sports photographer, a sports writer, whatever, there is no cheering from the press box. And you have to disassociate yourself from the game, or you're not going to get the pictures, you're not going to be able to write the story. And quite frankly, people who do cheer, I've come down on students at basketball games that are in there shooting like Syracuse students shooting the game and start cheering. I basically go to the PR director and have them taken out of the place because they're making us look bad. We're not supposed to be the fans. We're supposed to be objective recorders of what's going on. And there's no room in my headspace for getting involved. In fact, I'm not a big sports fan. I'm a sports photographer. I enjoy taking the pictures. I enjoy building the technology. I enjoy the thrill of the event. I don't necessarily root for any one team or another. Look, would I like the Rams to go to the Super Bowl? Sure, it happened last year. But once it happened, it was just two teams playing on the field. To me, it had nothing to do with my loyalty to it.
For more information about Richard, you can visit Mackson.net. There's sample pictures on there. There's a very lengthy bio. For more information about the podcast, you can go to awordwithjoy.com. And more information about my background, go to joybennett.com. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to write to me at joy.bennett@yahoo.com. Thank you so much for listening. Anything else you'd like to add to wrap up, Richard?
This was kind of fun to do. That's about it. Thank you for
being our very first guest. We're thrilled, and we hope to have many more guests. We'll be taping this podcast. My goal is once every month or so, depending on, we're kind of busy around here. But we'll be putting the updates on the website, and you can also email me if you'd like to be informed or feedback. Feel free to get in touch. And the other thing is, I'd like to thank our associate producer, Daniel McMillan, who's sitting right across from me. He's kind of a level-headed sound guy. And once again, thank you to our special guest, Richard Mackson. This is Joy Bennett for A Word with Joy. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great evening.